And we all know that the 16 days are meant to sensitize communities about GBV, but also as a call to government on actions that we need to take to address the fundamental challenge of gender-based violence. A lot of times we've had people saying that 16 days has been overrated and issues of gender-based violence have been overrated. But I want to indicate that actually it is not overrated because it has consequences in this country and it affects our economic growth. You know that over 50% of our women, of our population are women. And so if you have a position of about 40 people, over 50% of your population that are not productive because they are going through challenges of domestic violence, then you're not able to push your country into development. So it is important, it's a conversation that we think is important for all of us to engage in, and it is important not just for women to talk about gender-based violence, but also to have men participate in the battle against gender-based violence. You know that as a country we have a male engagement strategy, which calls on men to actually to participate in the process of fighting gender-based violence. So it is a clarion call for all of us, whether in the media, whether in civil society, whether in government, to have men also participate in the fight against gender-based violence. Now, this year we are working under a global theme, which is Unite, Invest in Prevention of Violence against Women and Girls. And we think that this specific theme speaks to a lot of things that we need to do as a country. As a country, we have very wonderful laws on gender-based violence. We have the Domestic Violence Act. We have international commitments to which Uganda as a country has committed to. And they are all really up to date. Now, what our biggest problem is in relation to the implementation of the laws. And what fails implementation of the law is that we do not actually invest in the implementation of the laws, especially on gender-based violence. If you look at Ministry of Gender, if you look at the community services departments at local government, these are some of the least funded government institutions we have. And yet they have a huge mandate of fighting gender-based violence. At local government levels, the Department of Community Services is the one that has the mandate to coordinate and lead the fight against gender-based violence at local government level. Unfortunately, for a bigger part of the local governments, they don't have facilities, including motorcycles, the means of transport, but also resources. Some districts have up to just 1 million shillings to run the response to some of these challenges for a whole year. And the same is true of the Ministry of Gender at national level, which is responsible for coordination of GBV response. And that's why we think that the theme for this year, which is on investing, is key, because we can have the very best laws, but if we do not have mechanisms of implementing or enforcing those laws, we will have a problem. If you look at the Domestic Violence Act, since we established it, it has been there, but how many people have been prosecuted under that law? It's one of those that has been least implemented. And I think it's one thing that we think government needs to invest in. Secondly, it's important to recognize the fact that survivors of violence have potential to recover and perform better. But they can only do that if we provide them with the support that they need. And there's what we call the guidelines on GBV shelters. We are supposed to be having GBV shelters run by government. And a GBV shelter is where a survivor of gender-based violence goes and gets support as she recovers from the trauma of gender-based violence. In some cases, the survivor cannot go back to the family where violence actually was carried out. So she must go back, she must find a place to stay. Our law requires that government establishes gender-based violence shelters. Unfortunately, as we speak, we have about 21 shelters for GBV survivors. All these 21 are being managed by civil society organizations. I think there's one for Action Aid in Katakwi. There's another one in Morocco. But all these are managed by civil society organizations. Funding for civil society organizations is not reliable. Today you have money, 3 years down the road you don't have money. And that's why we insist that apart from government just monitoring this gender-based violence, government needs to invest money to establish gender-based violence shelters that they manage. Because since they receive funding from taxpayers, their funding is more reliable. And so once we have this, we are able to have places where survivors of gender-based violence go and get support, psychosocial support, legal support, and material support that she may need within an environment where they are sure of provision. People perpetrate violence against women and you don't punish them. It becomes normal in the community to continue doing that repeatedly. And the police crime reports are showing that actually gender-based violence cases are increasing in this country. But part of the problem is what we call impunity. That people commit acts of violence and then come back to the village and tell the survivor, you thought you'd manage me, I am here with you. Okay? So key is that we need to be able to investigate and prosecute cases of violence. Not just having people come in to report. The danger is that when people come and report and they don't see any evidence of what has been, of any action that has been taken, they will not be willing to come and report the next time. And yet in the fight against GBV, reporting cases of gender-based violence is critical. Otherwise, you'll have gender-based violence happening in communities, but then nothing actually happens. No one reports them because they know that even when we go to court, nothing, we don't get justice. But what does that also mean? That it is not just good enough to say, okay, we've taken them to court. The other question is how quickly do you dispose them when they get to court? Gender-based violence is so unique in a sense that if you don't prosecute the case quickly, the survivors lose interest in that case.
How do we create awareness and component of seeing that people get to learn, and at what time do we give us time to begin taking, or if we must do so? There are a number of factors from the angle of the cultural perspective. The male counterpart, much as we are trying as much as the project, we are working so closely with the male action groups, which is the component of engagement of the male counterparts in seeing that we address the vice. But then we still have that as a big need that we need to address our minds to. And so it's really important that we need to encourage the participation of the male, much as the cultural institutions or the cultural perspective still allows male or the male counterpart to enjoy more freedom and benefits over the female counterparts. And so it's our collective responsibility that we need to focus attention, we need to push in our time, and we need to have active engagement constantly with both male and female to see that we address issues. Sometimes these cases are reported, and the case management aspect also has channels that has given the survivors or the victims challenges here and there. Probably at the legal perspective, and police, and the processing, and the psychosocial support centers, sometimes there are gaps here and there. As we made mention that the GBV shelters are being run by civil society organizations or partners. And so we call upon government to see that this is a call for action, so that at the end of the day, at the end of it all, we have these GBV shelters functional in nearly all the institutions of government. And so briefly, that's what I
implementation during our community engagements. we have had quite a number of issues coming from the community that really need our collective effort to address some of these gender-based violence vices in the region. During our community dialogues, quite a number of gender-based violence issues came up. Some of them are underlying causes to gender-based violence, and during the community dialogues, some people reported that the root causes of gender-based violence in the region is mainly excessive use of alcohol, excessive consumption of alcohol, then also people having multiple partners, then others are associated with the poverty as an underlying factor. We have tried to do quite a number of interventions to address some of these challenges. One of them is discouraging the negative norms, which normalize beating of women as a form of discipline. Also, other forms of violence like child marriages, GBV violence like child marriages, are one of the negative norms which have a negative implication on the well-being of women. We also discourage other taboos which discourage women from consuming certain types of food which are nutritious in one way or the other.
Of these people. I have some, I cannot say it is for 2 quarters, it is just for 6 months.
Okay.
So I have statistics here. We received the cases of defilement. So you can imagine, these cases of defilement, we have only received 3 reported, and how many girls are defiled. So that is where we should put efforts in. We have cases of non-maintenance. Non-maintenance, you have not given me food, you have not given me what. So here we have non-maintenance. We have 62 of women who come and say their husbands don't provide for them. We also have cases of physical violence. This is beating. We only having 10 reported physical violence. We have cases of land disputes. We registered 41 cases of land disputes. Physical, psychological violence, there are 2 cases. We have family disputes. Family disputes, we have family disputes. Even men reported family disputes. I'm trying to get them. So family dispute, we have 37. That is quarreling at night, you come today, tomorrow, So family disputes. So even men, I'm going to tell the statistics of men that reported from. I know men are here in this room and they're interested to seek for these services. So men, they're also reporting. So we have child abuse. We have 8 only. We have property dispute, traveling. This one is mine, the other one. My father, like I had, brothers came with their sisters. They paraded her to Action Aid. Their father trusted her to be the heir of the family. But their brothers were not happy with it. And to make matters worse, this girl was married. And she is the heir to the family. So the brothers were like, why a girl? Why not us the pillars?
Respond to prevent cases of gender-based violence. These communities have been trained and they have all the skills to help the community, and where they are not able, or maybe cases of assault, we have trained them on the referral pathways, on which case do you refer and where do you refer those cases. And also, as we're existing, because as civil society, our operations are not sustainable because we depend on donor funds. So we also liaise, we collaborate with the government, sub-county, particularly the community development department that directly coordinates the gender activities. So that our communities are linked to that office. If if we face off from that particular area, they know where to go. They know where to report the case so that they can be in position to be helped on that. So that is what we always do to see that. And then my brother was saying that he hears most NGOs talking about women and girls. The challenge that we are facing is on the issues of statistics. The interventions cannot be done if statistics are showing that men are not facing violence. That's why you see a number of civil societies are focusing on women and girls. Because when you look at the national statistics, the local statistics, they are showing that women and girls are the most vulnerable communities in our society. That's why all the focus is on women and girls. Thank you very much.
I know what it means. It is something that is very bad, that if you're not in touch with them, you may not know the pain that these people go through. But if you interact with them on a daily basis, when a day like this one, or this gazetted day is reached, you'd really put your best. Invest, it may not only mean finances, even time to handle these people as stakeholders. I am Sarah Giro, introduce my name. I work at the shelter. As I said, shelters. I work in one of the shelters and I interface with these survivors on a daily basis. I want to talk about brief of what happens at the shelter. At the shelter, we offer psychosocial services, psychosocial support.